G'day, I'm Scott Gray and welcome to part 2 of the Angler Diary program video series. In this instalment, we're going to learn a little bit more about how anglers are involved in the program. And this usually falls into two categories: general angler diarists and research angler diarists. And we're going to start today by talking to Ken Radley, who's a research angler diarist, and he's just pulled up from a trip out fishing. Mate, how'd you go?
Yeah, pretty quiet today, Scott. Just a few small ones. It's pretty rough out there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but you know, a few to sample, so that's good.
Yep.
You know, I just enjoy being out there, even on days like this. So.
Yep. Well, it takes a very dedicated person to be a research diary angler, which is what you are. What sort of information do you collect for the diary program?
I collect the size of the fish, and that's their fork length. I have certain locations that I nominate that I'll fish. So what I'm trying to get is a range of fish, particularly bream and estuary perch that are in the system, and I'm trying to find out where they are and what times of year that they're sort of more abundant or less abundant, and the year classes that are coming through. So I enjoy it, and that's the main information that I try to gather. Yeah.
And you've been doing this for more than 10 years now too, haven't you?
Yep, I'm into my 13th year now. I was one of the first people that started, thanks to a few friends at Deakin University that had jobs down in Queenscliff, and then I met Simon Conran, and he was someone who invited me to come along and take part, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah, now I guess that's the really unique thing about the Angler Diary program too, is that you're collecting information over a really long time period, which is hard to find and hard to do for scientists themselves.
And that's been great for me because I've actually been able to follow a certain year class of fish from, say, 1999 right through now, and I can follow their growth, and they're still abundant in the system. In fact, they've been probably the main year class that sustained the fishery down here, and they're about 34 centimetres now, so they're not bad on the end of the rod and they're not bad eating either.
Well, I'm actually a general angler diarist as opposed to Ken, who's a research angler diarist, and I record my usual fishing activities. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you up the river, up the Merri River in Warrnambool, for a little bit of trout fishing and show you how I'm involved in the program. Well, trout fishing is one of my loves, and that's the thing that I do all year round, but particularly in the spring months when the rivers are running and the trout are on the bite and they come up into the riffles here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target some of these trout in these riffles here with small minnow lures. Now, I don't do a lot of bait fishing. All my fishing is done pretty much with little bib minnows like that. And the idea basically is to cast them up into the runs where the fish are hopefully holding up, and then winding them back and trying to get a strike. So we'll see if it works. Oh, got him. Oh, that's what they do, they hide under the banks, and look at him here. It's just instantaneous when the fish come out in the current. This is a nice little fish. That's why I love trout fishing so much, is it's so dynamic when you're fishing these rivers. And we might actually just beach this one here. It's not a huge fish, there he is. Beautiful brown trout, and that's what these rivers are famous for. I've been fishing here for these fish in the rivers for nearly 20 years. Even though I've only been involved in the Angler Diary program for about 5 now. And that is a beautiful brown trout, about probably a kilo in size, very typical of this part of the river on the upper Merri here. Okay, the hook's out nice and quickly. Now I'm going to let this fish go, but it's very important that I record the information about this fish before I let it go, so I can include that in my Angler Diary for this trip. So what I've got here is I always carry a ruler with me and my book, just in case. And I'm going to measure this fish, write those details in the book, and then I'm going to head up the bank because I've got a couple of other good fish here, and I'm going to show you how I enter the data from this trip into my diary. Okay, now very typical of a stocked fish, this fish. Now I measure the fork length here, and that is, rounded down, 43 centimetres. Now the other thing I need to do before I let this fish go is check for fin clipping. Now all these fish in this river here are actually stocked by Fisheries, and from time to time they actually fin clip the fins, so we can look at the different size classes of fish and how they're going. So I'll just quickly check for a fin clip. Usually the ventral fins, one of them's clipped. In this case there isn't any clip, and the adipose fin here, that's actually still there, so that hasn't been clipped either. It's still a stocked fish though, but we'll let this fish go back in the water and then we'll record the details in our diary. Now the water's nice and cold at the moment, so it shouldn't take too long to revive this fish. There he goes. He's fine. All right, let's go and record this data. So it's simply a matter of writing in the date and filling in these boxes here. Okay, target species is brown trout. We're fishing the Merai River. It's important that you write as clearly as possible too when you're doing this. It makes it a lot easier for the scientists back at Queenscliff to enter the data. Time fishing started. Now, I started this morning, I checked my watch, it was 9 AM, and I've just finished up now and it's 11:30. I didn't have any breaks. Now, it was only myself fishing and I only used the one rod spinning. Now, I didn't use a bait, so I just crossed that out and I write lure fishing. Other anglers use bait, but that's not for me. Depth of water I fished was very shallow, so I'll just write less than 1 metre. And the hook patterns that I'm using are treble hooks. They're not standard hooks like people use for bait fishing, so I'm just going to write treble hooks in here. Okay, now boat or shore fishing, obviously I was fishing from the shore, so I simply circle that. All I need to do now is measure the fish. So I put the head right up against the end of the ruler there, make sure it's flat. I'm looking at the fork length here, and I've got to round it down to the nearest centimetre. So this fish is 40 centimetres fork length. I'll enter that in, brown trout. This one was kept, 40 centimetres. And just move on to the next fish. This one's a bit bigger. Head right up against the end once again, and luckily just fits on the ruler. Now this one's 50 centimetres fork length. Just enter that information. Okay, so that one's done. Now you'll also remember that the last fish I caught I actually released, and it's very important that I put that in the book too. Now at the time I measured the fish before I released it, so I know how big it was. Okay, now that was a brown trout that I released. So 3 in total here. I just ticked the release box with one fish, and that was 43 centimetres fork length. So I filled in all the boxes just to check. I've entered all the fish details. Other comments here, I might just write that the water was a bit discoloured. And there you go. Simple as that. That's all the information that I need to record from today's fishing trip for the researchers.